Look at these scenes. It's the final day of the World Blitz Chess Championship and Magnus Carlsen has been paired with Hans Niemann in the quarter final. The tension in the room is insane. Look at it there, palpable. What a game this is I'm bringing you. It's game 4 of their match. Magnus had won one, the previous one. Hans had won the second. They drew the first. So whoever wins this game wins the entire thing. And yes, we saw bloodshed on the board. Magnus playing with black, Hans white. Hans opens with e4 and no Sicilian from Magnus or funny business. e5, right? He means business has to stay solid. So we get knight f3, knight c6, and this Italian. Hans has become an absolute expert in this Gucci Reza piano. We see bishop c5 from Magnus, copy him, d3, now the pony develops, both players castle, but no king safety, fist bump, exploded out, no love lost between these guys. What a history. Research that one if you will. If you don't know it, you've been living under a rock. And after c3, looking to expand, Magnus goes d6, rook e1 and a6 gives the bishop some room. This knight rotates into the game. Magnus activates his cannon, knight f1 goes on the standard pony maneuver, and after bishop a7, preemptive, knight g3 covering the e4 pawn, looking to break, Magnus finally gets all his bits out. Classic chess, development strategy, the rook recaptures, and now Niemann strikes in the center with d4 for the score. He's slightly better due to the space, and he's threatening d5, winning a piece, right? So Magnus has to react, simply drops back with the rook here. If you want to go d5, be my guest. You open the bishop, the knight rotates, etc. So bishop e3 selected instead, interrupts this connection here, defense on the pawn. So now Magnus captures, huge pressure on e4, therefore bishop recaptures, opens the eyes of the rook. But hang on, can't Magnus do this, which he does? Pick up a bishop for a knight, meaning this one is forever unopposed. However, in compensation, look at Niemann's grip on the center and more importantly, his grip on the clock. A minute to the good already. Magnus has got the comfy pants, right? A lovely pair of denim jeans, but Niemann's got that clock control. What a battle. Magnus goes pawn to c ships. Queen b3 asked an uncomfortable question. Magnus just covers with the rook, rook a d1, the cannon's blasting through the centre, rook e6 from Magnus, lifting, another 20 seconds, shaved off the clock, queen c2, and that is a classy move, because after g6, now there's queen c1, Niemann just creeping round the board here, asking probing questions, playing like Magnus himself, and there's a really strong shot here, which is e5 immediately, because if this knight hops to d5, you know, the massive square you pick up, well, now you can go h4 and that pawn thrust comes really quickly. If h5, that looks horrible with the knight jumping. Say you capture, trying to remember the lines I was looking at, and then go queen e7, well, now you get h5, you know, quick attack. You're going to be exchanging here. It starts making weaknesses around the king. I mention this because Niemann doesn't go e5. He starts with queen f4. It's given the mistake. Now queen e7, and he doesn't arrange e5 in quite the same manner. He instead starts with this one. It's a bit of a cheapo. Imagine you play some random move. Let's show the threat. Bang. You can go with either knight. The point is, you're forking queen and king with one of these knights. Beautiful stuff. You just can't get out the forking way. That's a dead game. So Magnus sidesteps, of course, but look at the time situation. Knight f3, rook e8. He's got 20 seconds to Niemann's 2 minutes and 10. That is a huge time difference in Blitz. The tension's through the roof, right? You can see their hands shaking. And now what should Niemann do? Well, he actually goes wrong here. Best is, in fact, retreating the queen onto the dark squares. Looks like you're dropping a pawn, but actually this is untouchable because the sting at the end of the tail here is rook e1. Chewbacca's favourite move, or the Wookiee one I should say, because now the queen, if taking here, sheds itself for a knight, and if retreating, you know, this or something, then you lose an entire rook. This is the problem. The pawn would be poisoned in that line. But okay, Niemann didn't find this calm retreating move, queen d2. He's like, bang, let's go through the center here. I've got the world blitz champion on the ropes, but it does give a massive square, and this time knight d5 comes with tempo. So when the queen moves, again d2 preferred by the all-seeing engine overlord, but g4 selected. Now Magnus gets to take, and this whole h4 h5 thing not coming in the same manner. The rook recaptures, queen b4 apparently strong, but no one's really playing that unless you've got more time on the clock. You know, all these white pieces hovering around your king, so Magnus plays the excellent, practical bishop b8, trying to get that one into the game, hitting a nice diagonal, forcing pretty much this move. Queen recaptures, offering an exchange, which Hans ducks, taking best apparently. He instead does this. Magnus could keep the queens on, but he insists, and why not, right? Now when Niemann does it, rook recaptures. Black is marginally better here because of this isolated queen's pawn. That's what Magnus wants to fight against, but he's hugely down on time. Still a minute. Knight f1 from Hans, doing the maneuver, the tour de horse. King g7 re-enters, g3, rook e2 invades, but when this one spins round, now it allows, after bishop a7, king f1, and the rook is unceremoniously kicked back. a3's played, good move, dominating this knight. Yes, it blockades the pawn, but it doesn't actually have any jumps, and this is sheer class from Magnus Carlsen. 15 seconds on the clock, and he finds this maneuver. Bang, this is what he plays for, this is what he visualizes at the training camps, right? Watch how that one spins around. Knight c4, now rook d7 hits the pawn, knight e3 covers, and knight e6 just completes this picture of harmony. The pawn's under fire, it's stunning stuff. Now we see the pawn defended. What if you push, try and liquidate it? You know, it is covered twice. Well then of course you get this smack bang wallop, rude interruption, no time for this or this, that kind of thing. So you'd have to take, and now you can go for this end game, and that's a clean pawn ahead, should be completely lost, right? So the pawn wasn't pushed. Knight c2 meekly covering, but okay, still covering. Hands up on time here, a minute, that's significant. King e2, king f6, and now the best way to go here is some kind of waiting move. Let's say h4, b4. I mean, they're more than waiting moves, they are changing the position, but something like that. King f1 even, although that looks really weird. Long story short, what you shouldn't do is march the king onto the d line here, because you're simply in a pin. That is bad blitz tactics, right? You can't do that. Magnus pounces, pawn to c5, ripping things open, and you can't take, which of course you want to do because of this. Stepping back is best, but Hans steps this way, but he's even more in the firing line now. You can see the evaluation bar reacting here. That one's pooping its pants, but not Magnus's pants. They're intact. His lovely pair of Levi's. He takes with check. Now we see the pawn recaptured, and yes, it's on as even on material, but knight g5 highlights problems. The h-pawn under fire, and more importantly, this threat checkened, and then the f-pawn drops, the base of the chain. So that one covered by Niemann. It's very passive. Magnus does not take. Why? f4. Suddenly the knight is actually trapped out the game. Not ideal, right? Even if you can't win it, you don't want to be playing a piece down. Black still better, but why go for that? Why not centralize? Hit the king, which is staggering around the middle of the board. Check it once more, gain those valuable seconds, and look at the clocks. Suddenly, Magnus is ahead on time here. This is nuts. The king steps to e2. Why not to c3? Well, it's playable, but then still you can go knight a4 check, and if you do this to try and stay with the pawn, the problem is that you've got these pieces hanging. So you could start with a check, this kind of thing, or even actually b5 I was looking at, support the knight, but with all this pressure here, white's in some trouble. Say you try and cover, well now you check. Here's just some themes, right? Then the pawn is dropping. You don't have to play in these ways, but the white piece is getting really overloaded, trying to cover all these bases. So that's why Niemann steps this way, but now knight a4, and the b pawn just can't be saved. You know, if you push, well, the big problem is check. Now the king comes this way to try and stay with this one and the centralized knight, but you can go takes, knight b5, and again, it's just pin and win, baby. No good. So that's why the knight just steps back, saves itself from this double attack, but we get check. The king goes and a massive pawn drops here because then this one is weak and the knight's accessing this square. Can't get my words out. I think I did. Knight b4 is now played and it threatens a monster check in the center. That's why Magnus did not go knight c4 check, pick up the a pawn. He instead starts with this check, covers the central d5 square. The king steps up. What's the problem there? Okay, apparently king c2, king e2 best. This one was selected. Now the knight checks once more. This one goes back and now it rotates into c5. Magnus gaining valuable seconds on the clock, but all is not done. This is blitz chess. This game is insane. Knight e6 played, knight round to b3, g5 expanding, f3 played in response to that, but Magnus now switcheroos, hits the new weakness, and you don't really want to be going rook g1. Suddenly this one comes. You can kind of distract that knight, centralize this one with check, everything collapsing. Magnus that step ahead here. So instead we see the move of g4, saving the pawn, but it gives up this massive square on f4, and Magnus pounces, hits the h pawn, but I love this from Niemann. Does he passively defend with rook h1? No, he goes rook e1 here. I mean, he's a seriously strong player these days, low on time, and he's saying take that pawn, be my guest. I'm going to slide back over here. Sure, you can flick this one in, but you're soon going to have to move the knight. I crash through, I check. It's counterplay, right? It's chaos on the board. Forget the computer evaluation. We come back. Magnus didn't touch it. Again, he just centralizes pieces. Really good chess. King b1, always play it. Keep Hans Niemann happy. Hans Feingold. Cue image of Lord Hans Feingold here. The game's too serious today to chuck in too many jokes. Magnus goes rook c7. He wants to invade, hit the knight on b3 plus the weakened f3 pawn, and that's why knight d2, one of the strongest moves. Not played though. Rook d1, again looking for the activity. Decent move, but it allows this invasion. Double attack, knight defended, and bang, Magnus takes a critical pawn. Damages this overpowered camel toe pawn formation. A seahorse is spawned, and this is the thing though, because this queen side here, king side is collapsing. This one over here is now tender. All Magnus's pieces distracted, so Hans is gunning for that one. We get rook takes on h3. Now this knight checks. You've got to stay with the bishop. Another check. The king goes. Now we see takes here. The king re-entering. And yes, all of these pawns have collapsed, but watch this. Niemann captures on b7. He's just got to remove one more pawn. This one is running. The game's hotting up. They're scrambling on seconds. Magnus kicks the knight. It lands on c6, double attack. Now this check is played. Always good to do it. Pick up that valuable time. I get a couple seconds per move. Bishop f6 saves that one. It's dominating this knight on c6 now. And after rook b5, do not walk into discovered nasty tactics. So Magnus gets the king out of dodge. We see this knight centralized, preparing to win a bishop. Magnus doesn't blunder it. He's world number one. This pawn now drops off the board. Black's completely winning, but forget the bar. The a pawn's running. We get a check. The king sidesteps. Check once more. King d1 played. Magnus checks for a third time, humming away, check out my melody, and after captures, bishop takes. Finally, he's got one of those pesky knights on the board, off the board. They're so tricky. Rook's attacked, hits the bishop. That one's now saved, and after this move of, scroll down, get the moves here, a4, Magnus now comes behind that pawn to stop it dead in its tracks. a5 carries on, however, well supported by the knight, but now the big question, how are you going to achieve a6? Are you going to go this and this, that kind of thing? Niemann's on seconds. Meanwhile, Magnus, bang, he's going h5, ploughing down the board with his own dangerous passer, connected passers. Knight b4 hits the rook. It saves itself, hits the knight as a counter-attack, but check. the knight covered, the king stepping forward, and now Niemann's got a choice. Do you push with a6, try and somehow arrange that one marching down, or do you do what he did in the game, rook c6, saying take my knight, be my guest, I pick up your bishop, we check. Magnus goes for it, says fine, my king's now sidestepping, look at my pawns, look at your pawn, how are you actually going to stop mine? They're running, the king comes in, the rook steps back, attacked once more, but saved on the fifth. And this is the problem. Magnus has got so many squares to yo-yo with. So king b3 played, h3, king b4, rook a1, king b5, h2. Hans Niemann resigns. One of the most tense games I've ever witnessed live in my life. Why does he resign here? Well, what to do? You have to stop the pawn promoting, but so what? Promote it, spin the rook back around, who cares, chop off the queen, and of course you just march this one through, make the knight, draw the game. No, you'd probably make a queen right, win that game. Incredible scenes. Magnus slams down the pieces on the board as the game finishes. The emotions were running high. Now obviously this isn't the end of the tournament, there's games rumbling on, but I'm going to actually try and enjoy a New Year's Eve here. My Indian takeaway just got here, looking forward to that. Hope you enjoyed this game. I'll be back in the morning with the actual result of the tournament and some other game. Thanks a lot for watching and see you soon. Cheers.